41% of Americans earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. Not 41% of struggling families. Not 41% of people who made bad career choices. 41% of people making more in a single month than most Americans earn in 5. And here's the part that nobody puts in the headline. This trap doesn't punish the poor. It specifically, almost surgically, targets the successful. The higher your income climbs, the more precisely the machine is calibrated to consume it. I've been running numbers on this for months, and what I found isn't just that high earners spend too much. It's that the entire financial architecture surrounding high income, the tax code, the credit system, the social expectations, the very definition of success, is quietly engineered to make sure money flows through you rather than to you. There is a mechanism at work here. 4 specific locks that keep the trap closed. And once you understand how the locks work, the whole story of American financial anxiety stops being a mystery and starts being obvious. So here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you the 4 locks. I'm going to run the actual math on what they cost you, not in monthly payments, but in compounding you surrender forever. And I'm going to show you why the advice you've already heard hasn't worked, and what actually does. The metaphor I keep coming back to when I think about this is a treadmill. Not a regular one, a golden one. The cruel mechanic of the golden treadmill is this. Every time your income goes up, the belt speeds up automatically. You get a raise, the belt speeds up. You get a promotion, the belt speeds up. You make partner, the belt speeds up. You're running harder every single year, legs burning, sweating through a nicer shirt, looking like success from the outside, going nowhere on the inside. That's the high-income poverty trap, the golden treadmill. And I'm going to keep coming back to it because it explains every single lock I'm about to show you. Now, before I get into the mechanics, let me tell you about a man named Robert. Robert is a 47-year-old orthopedic surgeon in a mid-sized American city. Not New York, not San Francisco, not a coastal extreme. A normal city with good restaurants, decent schools, and a country club with a reasonable waiting list. Robert earns about $420,000 a year. He has been earning about $300,000 for the last 12 years. If you do the basic math, roughly $4 million has passed through Robert's hands in the past decade, give or take taxes. Robert's current net worth is $480,000. Let that sit. $4 million in, $480,000 out. That's not a math problem. Robert can do math. He's a surgeon who performs procedures that require millimeter precision in high-stakes environments. This is a systems problem. And the system that consumed 90% of Robert's lifetime earnings didn't sneak up on him in the middle of the night. It was sold to him as success at every single step of the way. The BMW was a reward. The private school was an investment. The mortgage was equity building. The dinners were networking. Every decision that contributed to his golden treadmill was framed as responsible and earned. That's what makes the trap elegant. It doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like living well. There's a framework from The Millionaire Next Door, the research book by Thomas Stanley and William Danko, that I think is more useful than 90% of the finance content published since. And they identified 2 categories of people that I find endlessly clarifying: PAWs and UAWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth and under-accumulators of wealth. The PAW with a moderate income can retire earlier with more options than the UAW earning triple their salary. The category you fall into has almost nothing to do with your salary, and almost everything to do with the fraction of that salary that actually sticks. Their formula is simple and brutal. Take your age, multiply by your pre-tax annual household income, divide by 10. That number is what your net worth should be at this stage of life. A 50-year-old earning $250,000 annually should have a net worth of approximately $1.25 million. Most high earners who run this calculation get very quiet for a moment. That silence is the sound of the golden treadmill being seen clearly for the first time. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to show you something about the retirement math for high earners that most financial advisors actively avoid discussing, because the numbers are genuinely uncomfortable. But first, let me walk through the 4 locks, because they're the reason the retirement math ends up where it does. Lock number 1, lifestyle debt. And I'm not talking about credit card debt, though we'll get to that. I mean the invisible, structural debt of a lifestyle that now requires your full income to maintain. A Clarify Capital research study found that 47% of 6-figure earners are actively delaying vacations they feel they've earned. 31% are stalling home renovations they've already mentally started. 26% are pushing back car purchases they've already more or less decided on. These aren't people who can't theoretically afford those things. They're people whose financial commitments are so fully allocated that there's no margin left for anything new, even things that previously felt affordable. That's the definition of locked. You've pre-committed your future income before it arrives. Think about the specific asymmetry. A family earning $80,000 a year spends around $2,000 monthly on housing. A family earning $300,000 a year might spend $8,000 monthly. Both families are allocating roughly similar percentages to shelter. Both feel equally constrained. But the structural difference is enormous. You can downgrade from a $2,000 apartment to a $1,500 one without restructuring your entire life. You cannot easily downgrade from an $8,000 mortgage to a $4,000 one without selling the house, absorbing transaction costs, explaining to your children why they're changing neighborhoods, and publicly performing the narrative of financial setback. The lock is asymmetric. It clicks in easily. It almost never clicks out voluntarily. The private school is the same. Once your children are enrolled, withdrawing them feels like deprivation rather than rationality. The country club membership functions as a social commitment, not a financial one. The car lease signals professional status in certain environments, where showing up in something modest sends a message you didn't intend. Each individual commitment had a legitimate reason when you made it. Together, they form a fixed cost structure that requires your current income in perpetuity, with zero tolerance for interruption. And this is where the golden treadmill reveals its deepest design feature. Every time you click into a new lifestyle commitment, the belt speeds up to accommodate it. You run harder. You feel productive. You feel like you're winning. Until the day the belt speeds up one more notch and your legs have nothing left. Lock number 2, the tax trap. And this one targets specifically, almost exclusively, people earning between $150,000 and $500,000. Not because the tax code is designed to punish achievement. I know that's a comfortable story, but I'm not interested in comfortable stories. It's because of what the marginal rate structure does to your actual take-home math, and, more insidiously, to your psychological sense of financial cushion. Here's how it plays out in practice. You earn a $50,000 raise. Your marginal federal rate, if you're in the 32% bracket, takes $16,000 of that before it reaches you. Add state taxes, call it 6 to 9% in a typical high-income state, and you're surrendering $20,000 to $24,000 of that $50,000 to taxes. What actually lands in your account is somewhere around $26,000 to $30,000. The psychology here is the trap inside the trap. You negotiated a $50,000 raise. You mentally allocated $50,000 additional dollars to your budget. You may have already made commitments based on that number, but you receive approximately 58 cents on the dollar. So you've expanded your lifestyle by $50,000, while your actual resources expanded by $26,000 to $30,000. The gap gets filled by credit, and the credit compounds. There's a particular dead zone in the income range from $200,000 to $400,000 annually. You earn too much to qualify for most means-tested deductions and phase-out credits. You don't earn enough to engage the kind of sophisticated tax structure, entity strategies, capital gains recharacterization, carried interest arrangements, that makes serious generational wealth largely tax-advantaged. You are in the most efficient income destruction zone in the American tax code. Every wage dollar you earn in that bracket is hit at maximum efficiency. I only fully grasped this after 10 years running my own business, surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers who spent their days showing me how money actually moves for people who know the rules versus people who just follow them. The people who escape the tax trap don't earn their way out of it. They restructure how income reaches them. That's a different problem with different solutions than just earning more. By the way, hit subscribe if you're finding this useful. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again, and I have considerably more of this kind of material coming. Lock number 3. This one is the least discussed, and I believe the most dangerous. I call it comparison debt. Goldman Sachs. Not a fringe publication, not a Reddit thread. Goldman Sachs explicitly cited in a 2025 institutional research report about high earners, keeping up with the Joneses as a primary driver of paycheck-to-paycheck living among people earning over $300,000 annually. Read that sentence again. A major investment bank, in a formal research document, cited a concept from a 1913 comic strip as the primary explanation for why hundreds of thousands of highly educated professionals earning top-tier American incomes can't accumulate financial cushion. And they're right. The mechanism is real, it's documented, and it scales brutally with income. Here is the structural problem at high income levels. When you earned $40,000 a year, your social peer group was largely composed of other $40,000 a year earners. Their cars roughly matched yours. Their apartments roughly matched yours. The comparison reference point was calibrated to your actual economic reality. When you start earning $250,000 a year, your peer group shifts. You're now surrounded professionally and socially by people at or near your income level. Some of them are quietly saving 40% of their income and living with deliberate modesty. The majority are spending everything to perform wealth at the level the group expects. And you calibrate your behavior to the performance, because the performance is the only thing visible. The balance sheet is private. The car is in the driveway. Social media industrialized this problem in a way that completely changed the calculus. It used to be that you compared yourself to the actual Joneses, meaning your neighbors on your specific street. Now you compare yourself to the curated highlight reel of everyone in your approximate income bracket across the country, filtered algorithmically to surface the most impressive moments. The weeks they went to Tulum, the kitchen renovation reveal, the new car in the driveway, not the weeks they were quietly stressed about their American Express statement. Charles Schwab's 2025 Modern Wealth Survey found that Americans believe you need $2.3 million to be considered wealthy and $839,000 to feel financially comfortable. The median net worth of American households currently sits around $193,000. The gap between what people have and what they believe they need to feel comfortable is $646,000. That gap doesn't produce motivation to save. It produces a chronic sense of falling behind that spending temporarily numbs. 63% of respondents said it feels like it takes more money to be wealthy today than it did last year. The goalposts move annually. You reach $800,000 in net worth and discover that comfortable now requires slightly more than that. You reach the $1 million threshold and find that wealthy means $2.3 million. The horizon always recedes. There is no finish line on the golden treadmill. That's the feature, not the flaw. Lock number 4, the fixed cost ratchet. And this is where the abstract becomes painfully concrete. There's a story I think about more than almost any other when I'm explaining this. A man named Ted, mid-40s, CFO at a manufacturing company in Ohio, earns $360,000 a year. Has done everything right on paper for 8 years. Promotions, performance reviews, professional reputation. Then his company restructures. He's offered 12 months of severance. He takes it. For the first time in over a decade, Ted sits down and maps every single fixed cost in his life. His mortgage, $4,400 monthly. Private school for 2 kids, $3,500 monthly. 2 car leases together, $1,700 monthly. Country club membership, $600 monthly. His financial advisor, managing a portfolio of $400,000 at 1.2% annually, $400 monthly. Health insurance without employer contribution, $2,200 monthly. Streaming services, app subscriptions, gym memberships, assorted recurring charges, about $400 monthly. Ted's fixed monthly costs, before food, before utilities, before anything discretionary, $15,200 a month. His monthly severance, gross, is $30,000. After taxes, at his marginal rate, he takes home somewhere around $19,000 to $20,000 a month. Ted is running negative $5,000 monthly on a $360,000 salary severance package. His golden treadmill was running so fast that even 12 months of full salary replacement couldn't keep up with the belt speed. The fixed cost ratchet is what happens when every lifestyle upgrade hardens into a monthly obligation. Not a preference, not something you'd miss for a month or two. An obligation with a due date that doesn't negotiate and doesn't care what happened to your income last quarter. The ratchet clicks up easily. Every upgrade feels like a reasonable reward, a justified improvement, a step forward. It almost never clicks back down voluntarily because every downgrade requires a public narrative of setback. So people keep running, belt at full speed, legs starting to tire. Ted's story has a reasonable ending. He finds a new role within 8 months, but those 8 months of watching his savings dissolve on an income most Americans would consider transformational. Those months changed something permanently in his understanding of what the numbers actually mean. Now here is where I want to introduce something I've been tracking since early in putting this video together. And it connects to what I think is the most underreported part of this entire story, the subplot to the high-income poverty trap. The one that plays out slowly and doesn't get discussed at dinner parties is what I call the retirement cliff. Not the retirement you see in advertisements with silver-haired couples on sailboats. The actual retirement math for people who ran on the golden treadmill for 20 or 30 years and arrive at 62 having earned more than most people dream about and saved roughly what someone earning a third of their salary might have accumulated through discipline. Gallup's 2024 data shows that Americans on average expect to retire around 61. The actual median retirement age in this country is 62 for men, 61 for women. In the majority of high earners assume, because the assumption feels almost self-evident given how much they've earned, that arriving at that age means arriving with options, with cushion, with security. Fidelity's 2025 research shows that a person who earns between $150,000 and $300,000 for the bulk of their career arrives at retirement with a median savings balance somewhere between $500,000 and $800,000. The 4% rule, the widely cited safe withdrawal rate, means $800,000 generates $32,000 annually in retirement income, $32,000 a year. For someone who spent 20 years living on a $200,000 lifestyle, that gap is not uncomfortable. It is mathematically catastrophic. You cannot retire on $32,000 a year and maintain a life calibrated to $200,000. The arithmetic is brutal, and it doesn't offer mercy. Now, compare that to a person who earns $120,000 a year and saves 20% consistently for 30 years. At 7% average annual returns, that person retires with approximately $1.4 million. A 4% withdrawal generates $56,000 annually, more than the person who earned double their salary and saved 4% of it. The income was more than double. The retirement outcome was 40% worse. That is the compound cost of the golden treadmill. Not the monthly anxiety, not the performative spending, not the inability to find $5,000 without liquidating something. The real cost is the 30-year theft of compounding that your spending conducted before your investments had a chance to run. This is where the story of Ted and Robert and every other high earner on the treadmill converges at a single point in the future. Somewhere around age 62, looking at a number that doesn't match the life they built. The retirement cliff is the escalation nobody tells you about, because by the time you see it, you're already at the edge. This is where it gets really interesting, because the escape route is not symmetrical with the trap. The trap builds gradually, one commitment at a time, each reasonable, each framed as forward motion. The escape requires one deliberate, full-system restructure, not a series of small cuts. Small cuts fail, and they fail reliably, because they feel like deprivation without producing meaningful financial change. Canceling your streaming services doesn't fix a $15,000 a month fixed cost structure. It produces the psychological sensation of sacrifice without the arithmetic of impact. The restructure requires answering one honest question. What is this spending actually producing? Not can I afford this? You can afford most of it. That was never the question. The question is whether the spending produces value proportional to the opportunity cost of compounding those same dollars over time instead. The car lease at $1,700 monthly over 10 years costs $204,000 in direct payments. If you invested $1,700 monthly at 7% returns for 10 years, you'd have approximately $293,000. The actual price of the car isn't the lease payment. It's the $293,000 in net worth you chose not to accumulate. Monthly payments are specifically designed to make the real price invisible. That is not an accident. I call this opportunity cost accounting. Running the real number, not the monthly payment, the 10-year compounded alternative, on every major recurring commitment. You don't have to do this for everything. Run it on your 3 largest fixed costs once a year. That's where 90% of lifestyle inflation lives, and that's where the math shifts. Let me give you one realistic scenario so this stops being abstract. Meet Sarah, 42 years old, earns $220,000 annually, has been earning above $150,000 for 8 years. Current net worth, $300,000. Roughly half of what the Stanley Danko formula says she should have at her age and income. Classic underaccumulator of wealth. Golden treadmill at full speed. Sarah makes 3 structural changes. She automates $4,000 monthly, approximately 22% of gross income, directly into a low-cost index fund allocation before it touches her checking account. Not what's left at the end of the month. The first $4,000, every month, non-negotiable. She treats it with the same obligatory weight as her mortgage. She audits every recurring expense above $100 monthly and cuts anything that doesn't serve a clearly and specifically defined value. Not, I might use this. Not, it's nice to have. An active, chosen value. She finds $3,400 monthly in recurring costs she doesn't meaningfully miss. A car lease replaced at term end with a purchased vehicle. A country club membership downgraded to a social membership. 2 streaming services she hasn't opened in over 3 months. Third, and this is the one most people skip, she stops optimizing for income and starts optimizing for net worth. These sound identical, but they are not. Optimizing for income sometimes means taking the higher-paying role in a higher-cost market. Optimizing for net worth means occasionally the lower-paying role in a lower-cost market produces a superior financial outcome because the lifestyle inflation doesn't travel with you. She turns down a $270,000 role in San Francisco that would have cost her more in housing, taxes, and cost of living adjustment than the raise was worth. Sarah, at 42, with $300,000 already invested, contributes $4,000 monthly for 23 years until 65. At 7% average annual returns, that investment alone compounds to approximately $3.2 million. Add her starting base, account for reasonable returns on existing assets, and she retires with somewhere around $3.8 million. At 4% withdrawal, that's $152,000 annually. Her pre-change trajectory had her arriving at 65 with roughly $900,000, a number she would have called success for most of her career, because she never did the retirement cliff math until someone made her run it. 3 structural changes. No raise required. No side hustle. No complex instruments. No crypto thesis. The golden treadmill is still running. She's choosing the speed. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is just spend less, and that's the advice you've heard 100 times. It doesn't work, because if it worked, 41% of six-figure earners wouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck. You're right that spend less doesn't work as advice. It fails because it's a direction without a mechanism. Understanding the four locks, lifestyle debt, the tax trap, comparison debt, and the fixed cost ratchet, gives you an actual target. You're not cutting randomly. You're identifying the specific structural commitments that are consuming your compounding capacity and addressing them at the structural level rather than the margin. The three things that actually move the needle are specific enough to be actionable. Number 1. Automate savings before the lifestyle sees the money. This isn't a preference, it's a non-negotiable paycheck deduction, treated with the same seriousness as federal withholding. The research on automatic savings is consistent across every study I've reviewed. When transfers are automated, they persist through income changes, emotional spending periods, and lifestyle stress events that kill manual saving behavior entirely. You cannot spend money that never reaches your checking account. Your brain is surprisingly accepting of a baseline it never had access to. Number 2. Run opportunity cost accounting on your 3 largest fixed costs every 12 months, not every expense, the top 3. Housing, education, transportation. These 3 categories contain 90% of the lifestyle inflation that built your treadmill speed. If those 3 are calibrated to your net worth trajectory rather than to peer comparison or status signaling, everything else is manageable noise. Number 3. Change the reference group you're optimizing for. This is the one that sounds like psychology rather than finance, but the Goldman Sachs data makes it empirically necessary. If your comparison reference is your peer group's visible spending, you will always be running to match a benchmark that is itself largely borrowed and performed. The research on actual millionaires is remarkably consistent. 94% live in middle-class or modest neighborhoods. 73% have never carried a credit card balance. Their comparison reference is their own net worth trajectory over time, not what someone else is driving. They stepped off the golden treadmill, not because they couldn't afford to run on it, because they decided the destination mattered more than the speed. Ted, the CFO from Ohio, the 8 months he spent in genuine financial terror on a $360,000 severance changed him in ways that no financial seminar ever could have. He found his new role. He brought the restructure with him. The leases became one purchased used vehicle. Private school became a very good public school with targeted tutoring. The country club became quarterly client dinners. And his financial advisor at 1.2% on $400,000 became a self-managed 3-fund portfolio. He ran the math on what that 1.2% fee was actually costing him. 1.2% on $400,000 compounded over 20 years at 7% baseline returns. He was surrendering approximately $160,000 in lost compounding to have someone consistently underperform the index benchmark. The fee wasn't 1.2% of assets. It was $160,000 out of his retirement. He moved the money. He manages it himself. He checks it quarterly. The golden treadmill is still there. He didn't blow up his life. He recalibrated it. But it's running at a speed he set deliberately, not at the speed the system defaulted him into. Robert, the surgeon, 4,480,000 out, is 51 years old. He has perhaps 14 years before he wants to stop operating. At his current savings rate, he retires at 65, with somewhere around $680,000 and a fixed cost lifestyle built for $420,000 in annual income. That's the retirement cliff, in numerical form, waiting 14 years down the road. Unless he steps off the treadmill. Which requires acknowledging that the treadmill was never success. It was motion dressed as direction. The 41% figure. The 40% of people earning over $500,000 living paycheck to paycheck. Total U.S. credit card debt at $1.277 trillion at the end of 2025, the highest since tracking began in 1999, up 66% since the pandemic lows. personal savings rate at 3.6% at the end of 2025. These numbers don't describe a country of irresponsible people who lack discipline. They describe a system that is extraordinarily efficient at channeling income into consumption rather than accumulation. And that becomes more efficient the more you earn, because more income means more belt speed. The people who escape it almost never looked rich on the way out. They looked like they were making different choices. Warren Buffett bought his house in 1958 for $31,500 and still lives in it. The wealthiest investor in recorded American financial history eats at McDonald's and drives his own car to work. Not because he is eccentric, because he understood before most people even thought about it that the golden treadmill is optional, and once you step off it, you never have to get back on. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the 40% of Americans earning over $500,000 who live paycheck to paycheck, they're not reading the boring documents. They're too busy running.